Hey, Will.
Hey, John.
Before we get started with the show today, I thought maybe we could do something a little fun, a little different.
Oh, okay. Well, what did you have in mind? John, you're not saying anything. You're just making some whispering noises.
Oh, sorry. Okay, here's my idea. We're gonna go get some fast food in my car.
What? But we're supposed to be self-isolating.
That's true, but we can just lie to the listeners, tell them we recorded this in February.
Oh, okay. John, why are we getting fast food? What's this all about?
Well, okay, here's the plan. So, we're gonna go through the drive-thru, and then we're gonna order whatever the person in front of us ordered.
Why?
And while we're waiting for our food, we're gonna talk about like behind-the-scenes gossip for the CINEMAHOLICS podcast show.
But why?
Maybe we call like a few celebrities we have in our contacts list, and like, get your phone out.
Do we at least get the food?
Okay, we're at the drive-thru. Are you ready? Okay. Hey, I know this is a little funny, but can we order whatever the person in front of us ordered?
John, why can't we just talk about movies? Why do we have to do all these weird things?
Okay, that sounds perfect. Oh my gosh, this is gonna be so great.
You know what? I'm leaving.
Well, wait, what? Where you go? Hey, we still haven't gotten our food.
Sir, you sure you want these 3 dozen pecan glazed smoothie donuts?
Yeah. Welcome once again to CINEMAHOLICS. Sorry, I have a bit of a stomach ache. I just ate a whole bunch of donuts from whatever. Anyway, I'm John Negroni. I'm the box office columnist for Adam Tickets, head writer, cinemaholics.com. Occasionally write books. And you know what? Okay. You know what? I do all that stuff on my own. Like, I don't need someone else here with me to do any of that's to do this show. I can just do CINEMAHOLICS on my own. Like, who needs Will? I mean, who needs anyone? You know, I can just... So you can find more episodes of CINEMAHOLICS, including our full archive, you know, the drill. It's all on cinemaholics.com. Those episodes or whatever, because, like, they've got this other guy on them. You're probably not going to hear from him again. I won't even mention his name, and it's not Maverick for once, but usually this is the part of the show where, let's see, I usually tell you at this point to check out our Patreon. That would be kind of pointless, because on the Patreon, you're donating to a podcast with two hosts who, you know, I thought cared about CINEMAHOLICS. I guess it was just one. I'm starting to wonder who that person really was all this time. But if you'd like to review and rate this podcast, you know, probably to lower the rating you already did, it's going to be... Maybe you're going to make that rating higher, because it's going to be so much better without Will around, you know, telling me what to do and making me eat all the donuts by myself while doing donuts in the parking lot. So go to ratethispodcast.com/cinemaholics. Oh man, those donuts. Oh boy. To easily rate this podcast, it's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, this week, let's see. Yeah, we're going to talk about a bunch of movies. Beastie Boys story. That should be good. There's a couple Netflix things here. Little indie movies. It's actually a pretty good list. This would be kind of fun to talk about it with somebody, like a friend. Kind of forgot what that's like. But yeah, first, you know, we're going to do off topics. We just have one thing here, because, you know, usually Will helps me write these, but he's not texting me back. So let me just check to see if he has in the last minute since I last checked. Nope. Nope, no, nothing here. Okay, so yeah, I did a bonus podcast with the wonderful Emily Kubin-Kanek of Film School Rejects. We talked about The Plot Against America, new miniseries on HBO, had a great conversation. That bonus pod is in the stream, the feed right now, so you can go listen to it right here on the Cinemaholics feed. It's great. You know, it's so much fun when, you know, like it's two people talking about movies and limited series instead of just, you know, one lonely, I mean abandoned, I mean a rejected, I mean self-supporting rock star host who doesn't need anyone. Oh, great. What is it now? What? Will Ashton?
Hey, John.
You came back. You, not that I care, but you actually came back. And what do you have in your hands?
Oh, I got some donuts.
Oh, donuts. Are those?
Yep. Pecan glazed smoothie donuts.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, John. You don't have to admit that you did anything wrong. It's already pretty obvious to everyone else. Now, can we please just go back to reviewing, you know, movies?
You would review a movie with me, even after everything I put you through?
Well, I mean, it hasn't stopped me before.
All right, our first review this week is Beastie Boys Story. And, well, this is an interesting one, right? Because this is a documentary film that was directed, produced, and written by Spike Jonze. It's about a really great band called the Beastie Boys that hasn't been like a fully formed band in a long time because of tragic reasons, which we'll of course get into. But I'm going to let you take the reins on this review because this is a new documentary on Apple TV Plus. As usual, I have to say, yes, I'm an employee of Apple, and so full disclosure there. I'm still going to talk about this, my honest thoughts, and like honestly, the success or failure of this thing has nothing to do with like my job, so like I'm not affected by it. So I'm just going to be totally honest with everyone. But you know, as always, you can of course like have a totally painless read of Will Ashton's thoughts. So I'm gonna let you take the reins here, Will Ashton. What's the deal with this Beastie Boys story? Is it a story worth listening and watching?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know too much about the like background for what the event was, but they did a like New York like stage show, it seemed like probably earlier this year.
Well, they did it had been going on for a couple of years, and then
had it
I think I heard about a show that was like in 2018, and they kind of like reworked it and kind of added to it, and what we're watching is like kind of the more like featured version, because not all of them were done by Spike Jonze, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I knew they wrote a book that came out last year, I believe, like late last year. And I figured that this event was just part of that, like a promotion for the book. But so it sounds like they were doing the show and then simultaneously writing the book. And then when the book came out, they just kind of finished up the show.
I think so. I'm not 100% sure, so I could be totally corrected. Sure. But yeah, I mean, this was on my radar originally because I thought it was going to be coming out at South by Southwest. I thought that, it
might have been, yeah,
and it was supposed to have a limited theatrical release. However, the COVID crisis has happened, and so that was obviously canceled, and now it's just out on Apple TV Plus.
Yeah, and then there was like a live component as well. I'm not sure if it was like, I'm not quite sure what that was about, but so basically the show itself, it's just a taped, like, I think the last show they did based on what they were talking about and some of the things they should suggest in the show. But, so basically the show itself is a retrospective of their career and basically expanding the past, like 20, maybe 30 years of them as a group. And then that leading up to obviously the tragic passing of MCA, aka Adam Yauch, who passed away in 2012 due to cancer.
Adam Yauch.
Yeah, sorry, Yauch. But yeah, I mean, the documentary, I guess when people see a documentary like this, they kind of expect more of like a talking head kind of thing where like they like show like clips.
Yeah. Something conventional.
Yeah. And obviously because Spike Jonze directed it, it's not going to be that, because I don't think he would have the patience to do a documentary like that. So like you said, it's like kind of like it's a mix of live theater and a kind of traditional documentary where we see the last two remaining members, Mikey D and Adam Horowitz, who
Horowitz,
yeah. yeah, so it's mostly those two who wrote the book, just talking about their lives and working with MCA and just exploring like how they grew as artists, and then like exploring like their early years, but they were just kind of fell into this, and then they were in a precarious position where they found success because the record label was like looking for someone who like could fit into that, basically like a white artist who could do rap for MTV. And they do talk about that. I was wondering if they were going to explore that, and they did. And yeah, I mean, the movie, it's less so much like a like Wikipedia, like this happened, although some people might see it that way. It's more them just kind of like looking back on what their group was like for about 20 or 30 years, and then like acknowledging what they learned, and then like realizing how much they have changed as people, and like how basically like who they were at the end of this is nowhere near what they were at the beginning of this, even though they still have some fondness for who they were at that point. So it's really, yeah, just like it. I mean, I don't know what it's going to be like for people who aren't fans of Beastie Boys, just because I feel like it's such a like, you know, I mean, I guess you could see it as somewhat being congratulatory for them, like just looking back on their music and their accomplishments. But I don't know. I thought it was a lot of fun. I'm very curious to hear what you think, Vic, because I'm actually not sure where you land on it, but I had a good time with this.
Yeah, I think the thing that sticks out to me the most is how different this is. And it really is a documentary unlike any other. And I like this format. I think that's what's probably going to divide people is the format and whether or not they like something more biographical, right? Like I would totally take this over a biopic any day or, you know, like your traditional biopic where, cause it's still in the voice and it's still the story of like these people. And you feel like you're kind of in their lives as they're telling these stories. But like, I don't know, there was just something that rang a little bit more honest for me. In a lot of ways, like I've seen people kind of compare this a little unfavorably to being like, I don't want to watch a 2-hour TED talk. And I definitely get that comparison. It does sort of have that vibe, but it's definitely not as like dry and sterile as a TED talk. Like the thing that stuck out to me about this was there was a lot of humor and it was just very joyful in the presentation. And I think you can only sort of get that when the guys at the center of it do have so much history, are such joyful, humorous people, and for the most part, pretty self-aware, right? And I think hearing them tell their own story on their own terms is a pretty valuable film-going experience. And I'm not sure if a traditional documentary might have been better. It would have been interesting to get the perspectives of this band from other people, like the other people who were there and what they thought of these things happening. But, you know, this documentary is not even trying to get that in. And you sort of have to rely on trusting these guys to give those details. There are times in the documentary where they do get a little painfully honest about ways that they treated a particular bandmate of theirs early on who they got fired, pushed out of the band. Because she was a girl and they didn't think, you know, they were told that she couldn't be in their band because they were the Beastie Boys. And it was all part of like, in a way, them selling out. And the way they sort of owned up to the hypocrisy of the success of like their first album and how they went off in the different ways. That was something that I was like, man, you know, I'm not the biggest fan of the Beastie Boys. I definitely have liked their songs since I was a kid, but I never really even examined anything about these guys beyond their names and like a few of the songs that I like, you know. But yeah, I want to hear what's your background, Beastie Boys? Like, I'm assuming you're a fan, or
yeah, I mean, I guess I'm somewhere in between that where I'm not like a mega fan where like I like knew all their songs and like
same
like kept up with all their albums, but like I was a pretty big fan. Like I definitely was very interested in what Adam Yauch was doing towards the end of his career, because I guess people will know because at the beginning you see like the Oscilloscope Labs logo, and I don't know if people knew that he founded that company, or he was like the main like head of that company, and he had a very, as like the documentary explores, like he did have a very serious like filmmaking background, and he was, you know, actually pushing some very interesting music videos and doing a lot of different film things, mostly for the band, but he was a very big champion of indie films, and I think that's kind of like where I wormed into his music. It was like a mix of that and just really getting into Spike Jonze when I was in high school. Like looking up his like music videos. I know like everyone's seen the Sabotage video and stuff. Like I think a lot of people have seen that video in particular, and it makes sense for him to direct this. Like it was either had to be him or Adam Yauch, and obviously Adam can't do it, so it had to be like, well, I think it had to be one of those two to do this story. And so I'm glad that Spike did it. And I think he did the live show as well, from what I can tell. Like, it just seemed like he was also directing the stage production. So
I did think it was kind of weird because he is like interacting with them. No, that was interesting.
I like that.
It was cool.
Yeah.
I thought it was weird that they never touch upon like their relationship in the 90s. Like, they don't really bring up Spike Jones and like how they met and any of that stuff, right?
Yeah, I think Spike was like afraid that it was gonna like seem a little like too like meta or something, I guess. Like, I think that was the reason why. I mean, I don't know for sure. Like, I haven't heard from him, but it just seemed like, because like it's really like the only time they mention it was when they bring up Sabotage, and it's just like, oh yeah, our buddy Spike was with us all the time. And it's like, oh yeah, where has he been? But no, I mean, I think those little touches, like you see like the little mistakes or like the like technical issues and stuff, like I could see that bothering some people, but I think that enamored me more into it because that just fit the Beastie Boys style, that they were kind of unpolished and like a little weird like that, and like they obviously were very willing to creatively push for different things and just like try things that were very off the wall,
do their own thing, not just do like the same old documentary inside the music and that stuff.
Right. Yeah, I mean those little touches I think endeared me to it more because it just felt like it felt more natural to me. Like, it felt like these guys like goofing around and having fun. And I think I wish it actually had more stuff like that, and then like less of the more like flashback videos like showing stuff. But I understand like it's kind of trying it's kind of going for like a middle ground because it wants to like tell the story in an accessible way for people who aren't too familiar with their music, which might be a fair amount of people nowadays. And it's also like making something that will be easily watchable and enjoyable for people who do know like all this stuff already. So I think they found that medium, that happy balance really well.
I like too that they go into a lot of detail about their first like 3 albums, and which is interesting because I think their second album, this is a good documentary to sort of be introduced to some of their lesser known work. I definitely was like, oh, I don't think I know any songs from that era, and I really didn't have any sort of understanding of what their lives were like after Fight for Your Right happened. And that's mainly because I'm not like a mega fan or anything. So.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think most people know Sabotage, but yeah, like those are like the 2 main songs.
But the stuff, the era in between is something that is definitely like not probably as mainstream. You mentioned Adam Yauch, and I also was like a pretty fervent fan of his, and his death of course was very tragic, and I remember like when that happened, and it was a huge blow, and and especially like his the film company he founded that you mentioned, Oslo. It's funny because we are going to be talking about a film from them later in this show, a new indie film.
Okay.
Yeah, Clementine, which is going to be I think our last review.
I didn't realize that was them. Yeah. That's
yeah. And I and a lot of people might not know this, but after Adam Yauch died, one of remember David Finkel worked on this? So like he was from Think Film, and he helped co-found Oscillope. He left after Yauch died in order to co-found A24 with Daniel Katz, John Hodges. So that's kind of the legacy. And like, a bunch of people probably don't know the connection between Adam Yauch and all these film companies that, people know him for the music, obviously. But one thing that really stuck out to me about this documentary was the attention paid to music videos, which I did appreciate because it was kind of a nice throwback to an era when MTV, like they kind of mentioned, was like everybody was watching it. I was like, man, I miss that. Like I miss, turning on MTV and watching like awesome music videos for a couple hours or something. That is like, now we just go to YouTube and algorithms decide what we see, and I hate that so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they're gone, but it doesn't have the same flair where it's just like you could turn on MTV and like watch a music video for some band you never heard of before, and then like like instantly be like, oh, I gotta find out who these guys are. I mean, there's variations of that, but it's just not the same as what it was before with MTV.
I'm a fan of this. I'm giving it a B+. I think it's like not quite in the must-see territory. Like I don't think you're going to be missing anything if you don't clue into this. Like the music's still out there, and it's still pretty accessible. Their story. Like you could read it, like you were saying, like off of a Wikipedia page. But I do really dig this format. I do think for people who want something kind of different and done in a way that is really satisfying, like that is this documentary. Like I think if you're a hardcore fan of the Beastie Boys, you'll probably love this. And like you, I'm not sure, like if you've never really heard a Beastie Boys song or like really acknowledged their music, I'm not sure how you might get into this, but I've been fascinated by plenty of music documentaries featuring artists I don't even like their music, right? Like I like,
Sure.
I've watched Bruce Springsteen docs that I've been like, I don't love his music as much as a lot of other people, but this is definitely really fascinating, and I think there is like a cool value to hearing it from the folks themselves. But I do agree with a lot of people who might say, yeah, this is kind of held back a little bit by how limited the storytelling is, because you're only hearing from two guys. And even though that opens up a lot of opportunities for the way they tell their stories and some of the background stories that they feature in, I especially love the way the credits include a lot of like, bonus footage that didn't make it into the final cut. I loved that. It was probably one of my favorite parts of the whole thing.
A lot of fun cameos in that point.
I know, yeah. Some fun name drops, needle drops, and everything in between, and the names of the chapters. I mean, it was all it just felt alive to me. Like, I felt like this is something they really wanted to make and do, and the passion's right there on the screen. And I would have loved to go to like a live recording. I think it would have been unbelievably fun. But yeah, B+ for me. This is an easy recommend for fans of music and especially fans of this band.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I'll just have to echo basically all that. I mean, I'm also a B+ on it. My only real point of criticism, I guess you kind of mentioned this, but haven't really delved into it, is that from like a pacing standpoint, the movie's kind of weird. Like you said, does talk about like the first couple albums a lot, and then like the second half of their career is kind of glazed over a lot.
Other stuff happened. I was like, come on, give me more.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's just like an editing thing, because it seemed like they had to condense it to like 2 hours. And so like they just had to kind of pick and choose what they want. And obviously more people are aware of like the earlier stuff, like even in retrospect, like when they're talking about like their second album. So yeah, I mean, from a film standpoint, that's a little weird, but it's really entertaining. Like you said, I think it's mostly for the fans or people who are at least familiar with their music, but I think you can get into this if you're not a huge Beastie Boy fan, but it may not just be the same experience. But either way, I think it's worth checking out, especially if it's available with a Apple TV subscription. So yeah, I would definitely easily recommend this one as well and give it a B+.
I think if you at least like Sabotage, which I feel like most people do, I think that could be enough of a way in. It's like, yeah, I know Sabotage, who doesn't? And then like you could watch this and maybe discover it's like, oh yeah, I've heard their songs, like What You Want and Intergalactic.
No
and
Sleep
like,
Till Brooklyn.
Cookie Puss, I listen to it all the time. That'd actually be pretty funny. But yeah, that's Beastie Boys story. Double B+ from us. Yeah. Let's talk about our next film. This is a Netflix film, so it's this is a bit of a streaming episode. I think there's only one thing we're going to talk about that's not a streaming release, if I'm not wrong. But yeah, the half of it. This is a new coming of age comedy/drama is how it's described. I didn't find a lot of comedy in this, but maybe we'll get into that. I think this is kind of just more of like a teen drama with like, I don't know, couple of humorous beats here and there maybe. Sure. This is written and directed by Alice Wu. It stars Leah Lewis, Daniel Diemer, Alexis Lemire, and Colin Chow. And yeah, you get the sense this is like the latest of like Netflix teen, movies, like coming of age things. I think the last one we talked about was probably All the Bright Places. And this is kind of that same like romantic story that we've gotten with other films. Like it's not as like punchy and bubblegum as like To All the Boys I Loved Before or The Perfect Date or any of those. It's a little bit more of like it's got more of a outside charm to it, a little bit more. I think it's Canadian too, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's like where this takes place. But so let's talk about. Yeah, do you disagree? Do you know something I don't?
No, I didn't know it was Canadian. I know it. I don't know, for some reason, like whenever you watch Canadian movies, a lot of times, like something's a little different, but you can't quite place it. And in retrospect, it does make sense that it was Canada, but I didn't. Well, while I was watching, I didn't realize it was Canada.
I think the reason I think I took it as Canada because the place where they live is called Squamish, and I think that's in British Columbia. Okay. So I could be totally wrong. That's why I'm kind of like, wait. Did I get something wrong here? Did they mention?
I wasn't
something?
Sure. Yeah, because I know like the sequel to All the Boys, like that was like one of those rare times I could spot it was Canada. Like I was watching, it's like, oh yeah, this is. For some reason, I knew like that was Canada. This time, I didn't know that. So
it's possible I could be totally off base here because I think they do mention that she applies to a college that's in Iowa, if I'm not mistaken. So it could be like Squamish America in this movie. I don't know.
Good old Squamish America.
Yeah, well, because Alice Wu, I think she's American as far as I know. I think she's actually from San Jose, which is where I used to live.
Yeah, I was gonna say she's like kind of like a tech person, I think, as well.
She is. Yeah. She went to Stanford University, which I have some friends who work there. So yeah, maybe I am a little off on that. But anyway, the half of it. The story here is pretty straightforward, actually. We get to know this young, shy outsider named Ellie Chu, and she's been living in Squamish for most of her life, and she kind of runs this racket in her high school where she makes extra money writing other people's term papers. So the students do that. They go to her, they pay her with like a Venmo type of app, and she's trying to do this because she's trying to make enough money to pay the bills. Her dad lives in town as the station master for the local train yard, and she really wants to kind of break out of her small town. She's not sure how to do that because she definitely doesn't want to leave her dad and everything. And she's a senior, so she's trying to make choices that will affect where she goes to college. And also, she's in love with this other student named Aster, who is this beautiful woman who it looks like she's the object of another person's attention, and that's a guy named Paul, who is a football player. And he wants to write a love letter to Aster. And he goes to Ellie because she writes such good term papers. Well, Ashton, surely she's good with love letters. Makes perfect sense to me. And so here comes the drama. Ellie tries to help him woo the girl that she's in love with. And I guess that does sound like a comedic premise, but this movie is actually, I don't know. I took it as very like serious. What did you think of this one?
No, I mean, it's not like bust a gut funny, but I think it's an understated sort of funny throughout. That like, I mean, yeah, like if you're like going in like expecting something that's a little bit more broadly comedic, I guess, but there's a lot of like really funny like understated moments, I thought. So I don't know if it's enough to call it a comedy, but I thought it was definitely pretty funny throughout.
I'm not even sure I would call it a dramedy, but we could look at the definition, and we should say, like, if we're looking at the traditional Greek theater definitions of comedy and drama, we could nitpick all day what we're actually saying here. But yeah, to the point of what you're saying, definitely not busted gut funny. I just didn't personally find it very humorous, but it sounds like you did.
Yeah, no, I dug it. I mean, I guess, yeah, I can see where it didn't really, I guess, fully connect with you because the plot, or like, I guess maybe more the script, it's another one of these high school movies that like very much relies on a lot of like set tropes. Like even to the point where I guess like having this come out fairly close to a recent sequel to All the Boys I Loved Before does, I think, make it almost impossible not to compare it to that film because there is like some very similar qualities to that film. But I don't know. I mean, I think for me, I don't think this is like immensely better than that film, but I thought it was better in some significant ways.
Whew, harsh disagree. The harshest of disagreements.
I'll be curious to see why. Because like,
okay.
I think it was mostly a direction I think that I appreciated more. Not that I dislike the direction in either of those movies, but in this one, like, there's a lot more attention to like the town and like the characters, and like there's just like little things that like just felt very rich and lived in a way that like a lot of recent Netflix movies I've seen, they kind of gloss over that. I don't know if it's just like a cheap thing or if it's just like they just don't think people will notice, but it just felt like this movie, there was a lot more attention put into like making this town feel authentic and like giving it a visual sense that felt a little bit more palpable and like vibrant in a certain way. Not like vibrant, like colorful and buoyant, but like vibrant and like there's like a lot of life going on around here, even though it's like a kind of quaint, off the beat town. And yeah, no, I mean, I just felt like there's like something about it just felt very rich in the visual sense, and like just the way that the director picked a lot of actors that felt like, you know, like they not people you usually see in like kind of lead roles, like the two leads here, like they definitely have like some like kind of understated qualities that like normally like in a high school movie, I feel like they'd be like kind of like the supporting character. So giving them like the lead, where I think I think all the performances here are really good, but especially our two leads where, I forget their names because I don't think I've seen them in anything else besides this, but, our
so
lead actress
lead actress is Leah Lewis. And Paul, I think, was the other lead you're talking about. He's played by Daniel Demir. Yeah.
I mean, I think he was probably like the funniest thing. Like if I had to point something like comedy wise, like I felt like he was like the most consistently funny character. But like, I don't know. I mean, I just really dug the weird kind of love triangle that they had here. The only thing that fell apart for me was just like the end of it. It's not like it crashed together, but it just felt like there was like this big scene towards the end where like tonally it just felt way off from like
I
the
hate
rest
that
of the movie.
scene so much, Will. Like I was cringing so hard and I was like, like what a disaster.
It's not even that it's bad to me. It just felt like this feels like it's like a different movie.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the point.
Like trying to be a comedy or something almost. And,
yeah. And then just the resolution without getting into spoilers just felt like very abrupt. Like it felt like, well, this is the end of the movie, so we have to tie something up. So that bugged me. I think that brought it down where I was otherwise pretty strong on the film. But overall, I mean, I definitely dug it a good bit. And I'm curious to see why you didn't, besides those things at the end.
Well, you know, I'm fittingly half and half with this one.
Sure.
I definitely like you. I like the direction a lot. And I do like the performances. I think our two leads especially are pretty well cast. I think that they nail their characters. You can really tell that they know their characters inside and out. Deemer actually has a harder job than at first glance because he has to take this sort of dopey, tropey character and kind of let him grow and mature and become a little bit more likable. And the same thing with Leah Lewis. I think she's tough to like at first, but then, as you get to know her, she kind of gets more and more out of her shell. And then it more evolves into these performances that gel a little bit better. Like they're more comfortable around each other, which felt nice. I felt like it was earned, and I really credit these actors and the direction there. And yeah, like you said, with the direction, it's definitely got a more artistic art house aesthetic to it that it's going for, with, you know, the look and feel of this town and the themes that have to do with like feeling claustrophobic in your town, and the way bullying depicted in this is a touch more realistic than you tend to get in films of this kind. Like
I also was very curious about how they use religion in this, like not in a way where it's like mocking it, but like there's like a lot of characters in this town that are like very religious, but like
it's just in
who
the
they are.
fabric of their everyday lives.
Yeah, exactly,
which is kind of fascinating considering the director is from San Jose. San Jose is not a very religious, like Silicon Valley is one of the least religious places in the country, in all of America. Like it's like one of the most, like, most people who live in that area are very atheist. And so you know, a lot of tech people, a lot of people who are a little bit more in that vein. So I am very curious like what experiences brought her to want to depict a town that's a little bit more similar to where I grew up, more of like rural Virginia. But it did, I don't know about you, but it did ring a little bit untrue to me. Like some of the ways that they talk about religion, and I don't know, there were moments where I was like, that feels like an idea of what it's like, but not quite hitting the mark for me. And so that gets me into the other half of this movie that I do not like. And I do not like this script. I don't like the dialogue. I don't like the character motivations. I don't like the pacing. I don't like the overall energy of this movie and how things happen and what brings characters about. It's not all bad. Like there's some things like a fun running joke, almost pun intended, involving Paul's like running because he's always trying to keep up with Ellie on her bike. Like that's fun. Sure. You know, that's kind of
that had a good payoff.
Yeah, you know, and there are little touches of like you know, the classic movies that get woven into this. His Girl Friday makes an appearance, which is fun. I appreciated that. But yeah, when it comes to the plot of this thing, and like, you know, there are certain scenes that happen, especially with this third character, Aster. And I think she's the reason this just doesn't quite work. She's played by Alexis Lemire. It's not the performance. I just think it's the writing. Like I just found this character kind of boring, and I just did not understand the reason behind the weight of all the attention put on her. And like the movie kind of makes bones about it, of just like, well, you know, like initially it's just attraction. It's just that she's pretty. But I guess like the big weakness of the film is it spends so much time with like her personality coming through text messages that you never get to see it through the performance. So it just made me wonder out loud, like, what's the fuss, I guess, of like, I just didn't think I bought it. Like I wasn't immersed. I didn't really buy into the amount of effort, mainly that Paul was putting into this. I think you kind of get it with Ellie, especially as like the flirting happens and you see more of like where these two characters could go. But then when you have scenes with Ellie and Aster IRL, it felt like it came out of nowhere. Like there were just so many scenes that just felt pieced and buzzsawed into this that it just rang false to me. And I didn't think this film had like an honest presentation. And so I definitely came away from it half and half, where I just thought it's like halfway there, but it still just doesn't quite hit the mark for me.
So, well, ironically enough, I'm half and half on where you're half and half.
What so a pair we are.
So is that like a fourth? Yeah, I mean, I think I get where you're coming from some respects, because I do think ultimately the biggest weakness of the film, I would agree, is the script. Just, I think, maybe not from a pacing standpoint, but just the way things are laid out. I do agree. I think if maybe Aster played a bigger part in the middle of the movie and we got a little bit more of a sense of like who she is as a person, as opposed to like being this like longing object of desire for these two characters, I think that would have made the ending a little bit more resonant. And there is a scene kind of like that, like maybe 3/4 the way through. But I think
it's like lip service.
It just needed a little bit, sort of, yeah. But like, I think it's another one of these films that like feels like it's overwritten in some respects and underwritten in others, where like the dialogue feels a little too cutesy at times. It feels a little bit too like put upon. And then like some of the plotting felt like it was a little haphazard, as far as like we were saying, like getting to the end where like this one character, like another character we haven't even mentioned yet, randomly kind of just gets lugged right into the film. He was introduced before, but he like kind of like just like head dives into like the finale in a way that felt like very abrupt. And I guess it's kind of the point, but it also felt a little bit like there was like 2 or 3 scenes with him missing before this, where like maybe if that would make sense. Like there's, like you said, there's a little bit of lip service paid that to build up to it, but that felt a little bit inauthentic to me. But as far as like the characters, like their inner lives, like I didn't mind the religious aspects of it. I thought that felt fairly honest to me. It didn't feel like super like complex, but I understand it's a movie. Like, I guess like if it was like the centerpiece of the film, like they probably would dive more into that. But just like you said, just like something that's ingrained in society, and like only our lead is like the one that questions religion. Like everyone else is just like something that they just, they accept and it's part of their lives, which I felt fairly honest to me. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, like some of this stuff, I really do like it a lot. And I think it's just the shortcomings make it frustrating, because I think there's like a really, really good young adult, teen, and coming of age film, like maybe even something on par with like Lady Bird or something here. And it feels like it kind of falls short because of the script. But the stuff that I like here is stuff that I think is really solid, and I would like to see more from Alice Wu. I know she has another film that came out like 15 years ago, which
Saving
I haven't
Face.
seen.
Saving Face, which very different from this film, and I'm very
okay. You've seen it?
Yes, and I'm very curious, like why it's taken her. She's a good director, and I think it's unfortunate this is only her second film in 15 years. She's clearly like an adept filmmaker, but it could just be that she hasn't had as much of an interest. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking into it a little bit, and I guess she like tried to do a couple projects, they just didn't get off the ground.
Interesting.
But and I think she kind of went back to like maybe doing some more tech stuff or like writing different things that weren't film related. But I don't really know for sure, so don't quote me on that.
Getting into the grades and everything, yeah, I'm a C plus. I think this is better than Tiger Tail for sure. It's a little bit more watchable.
Oh, yeah.
And because just looking at another Netflix film that happens to dig into dramas featuring like Asian American characters, this is definitely in that category. But it's its own thing, and the thing that sets it apart. I kind of said earlier, and this is a pretty harsh criticism, that I just didn't find the whole thing to be honest. I should rephrase that a little bit, because I do think there were some things I did find a little bit more true to heart. Like I did sort of feel honesty, and that was in some of the LGBTQ themes here. Alice Wu is gay, and so she's clearly writing something that's a little bit more personal to her, and like how it feels from her perspective to have like this sort of this yearning for another person in a town where that's not accepted. I don't think the film really goes full tilt in it, and in ways I kind of appreciate that, because we already have so many films that just really drive that, and instead it kind of more focuses on the friendship between Ellie and Paul. I guess that's where this movie loses me, is there's just something that happens with Ellie and Paul in this movie that I was like, I felt like it undermined something that already felt very truthful. And when they try to resolve everything afterward, at that point, the movie had just lost me, unfortunately. So I'm a pretty low C plus, almost a C, kind of a high C almost. So what about you?
Yeah, I can kind of see where you're coming from. Ultimately, I guess I'm just more receptive to the film. I was between a B and a B minus on it. And I think I'm going to give it a high B minus just because, like I said, those shortcomings with the script they feel frustrating because everything else seems to be working really well for me. And I feel like there's like a really solid film here that's just like, it shows itself at times, but doesn't really come out all the way. And then there's like little things like the beginning of the film, I was like, this is neat, but this reminds me of something. And then someone pointed out that's basically the beginning of Hedwig and the Angry Inch. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. They straight up stole that, which was kind of frustrating too. But anyway, yeah, I'm a high B minus on it. I think there's a lot of stuff to really value here. And I do think a lot of people are going to enjoy it. I mean, it feels above the cut for some of these teen drama / dramedies that we've gotten from Netflix. I mean, not that all of them are bad, just that some of them, I mean, you've seen more than I have, so you can judge more accurately. But
unfortunately,
it just feels like, yeah, it just feels like a lot of them are kind of like, they don't put as much effort into like some of these things as this movie does in some key ways. But at the same time, the fact the script here just doesn't feel up to par makes it a little bit disappointing in that respect. So yeah, solid B minus for me.
I'm really curious. Like, one of these days, we need to figure out like the difference between you and me when it comes to romantic teen movies, because it just seems like we have very different tastes. And I don't know if we've ever articulated it very well, because we tend to disagree. So? We tend to be a little, not like totally polar opposite, but it just seems like I dig a certain type of romantic teen that you don't like nearly as much, and then vice versa.
I don't know what other examples are though. I mean, unless I'm
we'd have to dig into
like,
it. But yeah, I'm just kind of speaking.
Well, like what's
off
another? Yeah, like what's another example besides Show the Boys, which I did like overall.
Set It Up.
I
mean,
I didn't see Set It Up.
Lady Bird. Yeah, I'm trying to think of one that you have seen. But I guess, okay. I don't know if Lady Bird is as good of an example. I'll have to give this some thought. And also...
Okay. I mean, I'm curious about this. Yeah.
So I remember one time one of our commenters like made up a fake like CINEMAHOLICS bingo card. And I just thought of a new one, which is, all right, Will tosses out 2 grades that he's in between and chooses the one that's lower.
Yeah,
so
that's pretty fair.
If Will Ashton says, I'm between this and this, he's going to say high of this lower one. So if it's B and B minus, high B minus. If it's between a B and a B plus, I'm going to go for a B. There's your bingo card.
Yeah, I'm going to have to throw everyone off because now I'm going to be like, I'm between an A and an F.
I'm going to give it
I guess I'll have to go with a B.
All right, that's the half of it. Solid recommendation from Will. Very tepid enthusiasm from me.
Yeah, not even any enthusiasm. You
seem to be pretty down on it. Unenthusiastic. I saw this from John, but with caveats.
Sure.
Let's talk about another Netflix thing. This is a mini series. I don't know if it's a mini series or if it's like I think it is getting another season. So maybe
is it?
I think so. I'm not sure actually.
I heard it was a limited series.
It's supposed to be. Yeah, I'm kind of curious actually. I don't know this for sure.
I mean,
the way it ends, you're kind of like, yeah, when's the next one coming out?
Okay, because I know like this is Ryan Murphy, not to steal your synopsis, but I know like Ryan Murphy does a lot of like anthology shows, so like I could see this maybe being like an anthology, like another era of Hollywood, but maybe not going back to these characters. But you would know better than me since you watched the show.
That thought crossed my mind for sure, and especially with what appears to be decent success with this so far. A lot of people are talking about this. This is called Hollywood, and it definitely seems to be leaving a little bit of an impact with people. This is a new, how to describe it? Because you kind of touched on it. It's kind of like it's revisionist almost. Like it's looking at the Hollywood Golden Age. So the Hollywood Golden Age happened right after World War II. So this is taking place in the late 1940s. If you look at classical Hollywood cinema, you're going from like the 19-teens into the 1960s, which is worth bringing up because the Hollywood Golden Age, most people would say, kind of ended with the murder of Sharon Tate in 1969. That was really when films kind of changed forever. You know, films like Bonnie and Clyde had already set that in motion, and, you know, the French New Wave had already carved out a new direction for Hollywood in general that they would implement in the 1970s in more earnest fashion. But the golden age as we know it, which is epitomized by films like Sunset Boulevard, right? And films we've talked about in Extra Milestone, like Some Like It Hot and His Girl Friday, Casablanca, all these films. This is like right in the almost dead center of that era, at least thematically. And what Ryan Murphy has done is he's sort of said, you know what, I'm going to make a show that takes place in this golden age, but I'm going to rewrite history. So it's very similar to the ending of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where Quentin Tarantino was like, you know, I'm going to do something very different with real events because it's like a fairy tale. And he did that to great success. A lot of people love that movie, and you know, it got nominated for a bunch of Oscars. And we're kind of getting the same thing with a Netflix show here, to the point where a friend of the show, Kristen Lopez, actually wrote about this on IndieWire, where she was comparing the two things and being like, here's where, you know, Hollywood has that same fairy tale mentality, but here's where, you know, it does it in a very different way, because instead of focusing on Sharon Tate, you know, the sort of like prototypical classic Hollywood rising star, this one is proposing, well, what if diversity happened way earlier than in real life? And what would it take for that to happen? So we follow all of these different characters. We start with a guy named Jack Costello, who I don't believe is based on a real person, but kind of is more of an amalgamation of different actors who were, this guy's played by David Corenswet, by the way. You'll recognize him from The Politician, another Ryan Murphy show on Netflix. And he's this World War II veteran, and he moves to Hollywood because he wants to become an actor. He crosses paths eventually with a guy named Archie, played by Jeremy Pope, who is an aspiring screenwriter who happens to be African-American and gay. And the two of them eventually get into contact with a director named Raymond Ainsley, played by Darren Criss, who is half Filipino. And his girlfriend, Laura Harrier, played by Camille Washington, is an up-and-coming black actress. And like so on and so on. You have all of these characters colliding over the course of the first few episodes because they all want the same thing. They all want to make a movie that is unlike anything made before. And that movie is going to prominently feature people of color. It's going to be coming from not just an African-American screenwriter, but a gay screenwriter. And it's about like, what if this had happened? What if Hollywood had taken a chance that it never did? You know, what if it took, you know, real life people like Rock Hudson, who's a prominent character in the show, who was in the closet for his acting career, he's played here by Jake Picking. What if he could have been in a situation where he could be more outspoken about his homosexuality, where his relationship with another man, in this case, Archie Coleman, could be Archie Coleman. I don't think he's a real person, by the way. It could have actually been something more public. And so this is an aspirational kind of show that is relishing in revisionist history. And its main theme, as it's sort of like, let's make a movie mentality happens, is that movies can change culture. And I think this is the reason why the show is splitting people quite a bit. I think a lot of people are watching this show, and similar to my criticism of the half of it, they're like, this isn't honest. And they think that it's self-congratulatory in a lot of ways. And I've read some reviews from people who definitely do not like this. And my takeaway from it, without giving away a lot, because I think one of the thrills of this show is just getting into its universe and meeting lots of people. There are lots of actors in this I haven't even brought up who are just absolute legends. But I don't want to spend all day going through the resume of this movie. Instead, I just want to point out that it is highly watchable. I think it's very addicting. I watched the whole thing in one day. I just went episode to episode. I really, really got into it. To the point where I was also trying to watch Never Have I Ever, which is another Netflix show. And I had to stop because, like, man, I don't want to stop watching Hollywood yet. I'm going to watch this first and then get into Never Have I Ever eventually. But yeah, this one's like, it's Ryan Murphy. Like, you kind of already know if you like his style. I think compared to his other shows like The Politician and Glee, this one's a little bit more like, it reminds me more of American Horror Story, in not that it's horror in any way, but in just the way it's written is a little bit less Murphy, you know, like in shows like The Politician, I've mentioned this on the show before, it's just like every character is like over competent. Like the way they talk is just not, it's inaccessible. It's like, these people are like, what are, they're know-it-alls, like they're a little unlikable on purpose. In this one, the characters are a little bit more upbeat. I think the dialogue is a little bit more polished, and I think the production design is impeccable. Like, you just feel like this is 1947. You feel like this is the world that it's portraying. And that is really key, because when things start happening where you're like, nope, this is clearly like taking, a total leap into fairy tale. I responded very well to it, because I thought that it did the work to get you to that place. Some people might read the headlines and be like, oh, okay, so like the first episode jumps right into a completely bizarre reality. No. Like the world that you're engaging with in Hollywood in this movie, in this show, is still filled with prejudice. It's still filled, but with all the obstacles that you would expect of like, okay, there's protests, there's people trying, like death threats, and like it's saying this wouldn't have been easy. Like it's not like they could have just made a movie like this and everything would have been fine. It's sort of saying, no, like here are the obstacles they would have faced, but if you could just still like have the resolve to do this for these reasons, then the world could be very better. And I think some people would look at that and be like, movies are not that important. Movies don't really change culture. And I just think that's a lot of hogwash. I think movies are extremely important to culture, just not all of them. And I think it is a little bit, it's a little arrogant in some ways intellectually to sort of be like, yeah, well, this movie would have changed everything, right? And yeah, a lot of movies come and go. A lot of movies come and they don't really, move the needle in any respect, but then other ones do. One of the things I thought about while watching this was The Godfather. Like, a lot of people don't even want to address the fact that The Godfather changed the world in some ways for the worse, because it kind of created a myth of the Italian mobster that actually inspired like real mobsters and the way they acted, that actually made it more difficult for police to stop them. The idea of like having honor among thieves and like the Italian mafia was something that was kind of made up for The Godfather, and it influenced the people in that actual world to be a little bit less like they were more afraid of being a rat. That's just one example, but like, yeah, like movies affect culture. Pop culture is very influential, and I do like that angle that this show has taken. Now, is it going to be very effective for a lot of people? No. Like, it's not. Like, I think a lot of people are going to watch this and be like, no, this is just silly. But not for me. I thought it was more inspiring than it was silly. And even though it is trite and it's a little, it's a little glossy, I don't know. There was just something about it that I responded well to, because I wanted to see everything happen, even though I didn't believe it. And I guess that is like the dream of Hollywood in a nutshell. So I haven't talked a lot about like what really happens in this show. I've left out a lot of information, and that's really on purpose, because I just think that this is a fun show to watch, just kind of blind in some ways. You won't watch it totally blind if you just listen to me talk about all that, but you definitely will be, I think, surprised by a lot of what happens, and a lot of how these characters intersect. And I think it's worth checking out. And again, I really thought that by the end of this, we were actually going to see, we were going to see like another season. So I'm a little curious how that didn't come into fruition. I'm a little confused, but maybe we'll be able to fact check that later. Few people I didn't mention who are in this, who I should give some due to. Dylan McDermott is in this, one of my favorite roles. I won't say who he is, but I'll just say he runs a gas station. And Samara Weaving, wonderful in this show. She doesn't get a ton to do, but she definitely has some incredible dialogue, some comedic stuff that I thought was kind of making me laugh out loud. Patti LuPone, got to mention her showing up in the first episode. Legend, of course. I'm not going to get to everybody, but I do want to say I was very surprised to see Maude Apatow, the daughter of Judd Apatow, was in this, and she kind of had not a huge role, but this was one of the first times I think we've seen her more as an adult. And I was a little uncomfortable. It's like, that's the kid from Knocked Up and Funny People. And then, yeah, it was kind of like she plays the wife, a pregnant wife. And I was like, man, time's moving, Will Ashton.
Yeah.
Kids are growing up.
She's knocked up.
Set you up.
Time is a flat circle.
Yeah, you're going to see like Queen Latifah. You're going to see Rob Reiner. You're going to, they went all out. They got such great people for this. And I recommend giving Hollywood a watch. The first 2 episodes are a part 1, part 2. You really have to see both of them to really understand like what you're in for. But I hope you do see this, Will, because, I think you will at least be interested by all of the real life Hollywood, classic Hollywood clues and hints about real things that happen. Real movies get mentioned here. Real life people like Anime Wong is fictionalized in this. And if you're a big film lover, which is a big reason why I wanted to make sure we highlight this, even though it's a mini series, you're definitely going to. Cinemaholics are going to get something out of this, at least in the attention to detail it has in classic cinema. It doesn't get everything right. There are a few things, like a few lines where I was like, that's not true. She's not no. But, if you could turn off your snobby brain for a minute, I did. And I was like, I'm just going to take this in and let Ryan Murphy have his fun. I think you'll have some fun too. So that's Hollywood, which is now on Netflix. Are you thinking about checking this one out, Will?
Not especially. But I don't know. I'm not opposed either because I don't know. I have a very, I guess, mixed relationship with Ryan Murphy. I'm a little bit more open to his stuff than I think some people are because I know some people are really just not fans of Ryan Murphy, and I understand that. But I did really enjoy the OJ American Crime Story season. I think that's probably some of his best work as a filmmaker and as a showrunner. And I also enjoyed Feud. I don't know if you ever got around to watching that one. The with Susan Sarandon.
I haven't seen it, but I feel bad I didn't mention it. It definitely is an interesting precursor to this because that whole thing takes place in the 1960s.
Right.
But it appears to have like a very similar mentality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I dug it. Actually, I think I liked it a little bit more than some people did because it didn't really get a lot of didn't get a wide response from what I remember. So I dug that, but like everything else I've checked out, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff he's done, and I'm not remembering everything off the top of my head. But I know, like, I've seen a little bit like American Horror Story, and wasn't really for me. I guess maybe if I watch more of it, I like it. But yeah, I mean, as a filmmaker, I'm kind of hit or miss, I guess, with Ryan Murphy. I'm surprised that his writing doesn't play more of a factor here because looking at the episodes, it seems like he wrote nearly all of them. So I was kind of surprised to hear you say that. But.
Yeah, he wrote he did at least co-write all of them except for I think the penultimate, which is interesting because I can't get into detail, but the penultimate is a very crucial episode. It's very different from the other ones, which maybe that has something to do with it. And also he only directed part one, which is called Hooray for Hollywood. So he kind of worked with a lot of other people on this, especially Ian Brennan, who worked with him a lot on Glee and I think Scream Queens.
Yeah, those are two of the other ones I was forgetting off the top of my head. But yeah, I never really watched either of those, so I can't comment. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Ryan Murphy is a very prolific filmmaker. I guess more of a showrunner technically. But yeah, I mean, his stuff, sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. This seems to be some of the stuff I like and dislike from him in one package. So I don't know. It's a firm maybe, I guess, for me.
Yeah, I'm not so in love with it that I'm be like, you gotta rush away and see it. But I do think it is fun to watch because of how polarizing it is. People either love it or hate it. And I mean, I definitely like it. I don't think I love it, but I'm definitely glad I saw it. So that's Hollywood. All 7 episodes are on Netflix now. And yeah, I guess there's not going to be a second season, but oh well. I think that it's a strong first one, or a strong show as it is.
Never say never, but I don't know. It seems like, from what I can tell, or from what I've been told, it seems like it was meant to be a limited series. So if they do a second season, very possible that it's like another era or exploring a different part of this era. But I don't know. We'll see.
All right, let's get into another Netflix thing.
Yeah,
it's just Netflix, and more Netflix. But this is the last Netflix thing we're going to talk about for this episode. This is a new thriller called Dangerous Lies. It stars Camila Mendes, who you will recognize from some other Netflix things, but most prominently on Riverdale. And which I know you haven't really seen.
Nope.
Riverdale, Will Ashton. But wait, we also have Jesse T. Usher, who we saw him in like Independence Day, Resurgence, and all that. But
Percy Jackson.
We saw Percy Jackson. We also saw him in The Boys, the Amazon Prime show, and which probably my favorite performance from him. So when I heard about this one, I was like, oh, those are 2 actors I enjoy. Elliot Gould is in this. Sasha Alexander.
Yeah,
this is interesting.
Yeah.
But okay, so this came out April, like toward the end of April, so it's about a week now. What is this movie, Will Ashton, and why should I ignore it?
Well, I'll tell you why. So yeah, the only reason this wasn't on my radar or anything, I saw it was like the #1 movie on Netflix for like, I think you said like a week. And I'm like, well,
and you were like, how dangerous could these lies even be?
Well, not even that. It was just that I was actually thinking of the show. I was like, I know John's never going to watch this thing, but I'm like, a lot of people are watching this. I might as well check it out for the podcast. Just 'cause I figured
Selfless.
a lot of people.
Selfless will
Yeah,
action.
yeah. I figured, well, if there's no movies in theaters, I might as well check out this crummy Netflix film that a lot of people are watching, but not a lot of people are liking. But yeah, so this is another, like we said before, they do a lot of like young adult coming of age movies, and apparently there's also like this new side of Netflix where they do a lot of like high stakes thrillers. Apparently, I've only seen like maybe one or two besides this one, but I know there was like one with what's the girl from Sweet Life of Zach and Cody?
Not Debbie Ryan, Ashley Tisdale, Brenda Wong, and I don't know.
Brenda Wong. It was Brenda Wong.
Was her? I know what
yeah.
you're talking. Where she's like married to the guy, but not really. I don't even remember what that was called.
I don't know. I didn't.
She she has amnesia or something.
Maybe. I just know.
I know what you're talking about.
They all have generic titles. They have people that you forgot about from TV shows, and then they do really well on Netflix for like a week.
Okay. Gimel Mendez is she's kind of at the height of her popularity right now. I don't think she's on a descend right now.
Sure, that was unfair to her because I don't really know her too well.
Should apologize.
I know a lot of people like Riverdale. I do apologize to Gimel Mendez.
Just kidding.
Especially because but no, I mean I don't know her. I don't know her. I spoke after her. But yeah. So basically, this is a movie directed by Michael Scott, who not related to the character from The Office, but it might as well have been because so I don't even know how to really get into the plot, but the like most roundabout like general synopsis I can give is that there's a young married couple who the woman in the couple played by Camila Mendes, who's named Katie. She does like I don't know exactly what the job title is, but she helps this older rich gentleman played by Elliot Gould, like basically just helps like with running the house, keeping sure that he's like, taking his medicine, all this stuff. Kind of similar to what Ed Armas was doing in Knives Out, which is a comparison that's very easy to make given where the plot goes, which is that they're a young married couple. They're struggling to get by, but she's very honest. Like she doesn't have any, intention of, trying to misdeed this older gentleman that's very rich that she's caring for. But later on, he passes away and they have to figure out, like what's the next step. But they realize that in his attic, there's like a huge wad of money, like basically like $500,000. And they're like, well, like he had no family. He doesn't have any, close relatives besides you or any other close people in his family or his life besides you. Like, if there's anybody in his life that he would want this money to go to, it would be you. So they basically, try to sneak the money out. And then they find out that she was actually, meant to be given the house and like all this stuff. And, that's good. But, unfortunately there's some figures that lurk around, her life that, are part of the quote unquote dangerous lies that, cause her a lot of stress and ill will throughout the rest of this movie. And it also stars Jamie Chung and Sasha Alexander and Cam Gajanet, who I believe was in the Twilight movies and Burlesque. And this is like the first thing I've seen him.
You're talking about Cam Gigandit?
Yeah, whatever his fake made up name is.
Oh my gosh. He was in Magnificent Seven, right? And
was he?
Easy Yeah,
he's Bad Johnson. I know he's Bad Johnson. That's all I remember besides.
I think a lot of people might more recognize him from the OC. It's one of the bigger things he's done.
Okay.
Well, that he had a bigger role, I think, than in Easy A. But yeah.
Well, I'll just say that, so the performances in here are pretty uniformly bad. But I think Kamel Mendes is trying. It's most of the material because the script is just terrible. It's very, very run of the mill, trite. Just your kind of bargain bin type of story that is more relying on twists, thinking is clever than actually doing anything investing or interesting with the plot. But the performances are just kind of all around the map because you got Kamel Mendes and Jesse Tias who aren't really good, but they're trying. And then you got Elliot Gould, who's clearly checked out, which I don't blame him because he's Elliot Gould and he's much better than this movie. You got Sasha Alexander, who's kind of sitcom or not procedural drama mode where she's kind of giving a performance, but she seems very confused by what's going on. Jamie Chung is not enough to really. She's I'm just here to do my job. And then you got Cam Gajanet, who's I don't know if this is mean to say, but it's he's doing an impression of acting.
Wow. Holy
his
cow.
Performance is is one of the weirdest, most awkward performances I've seen in a long time. It's like he's like trying to figure out acting as he's acting. And it is easily the most distracting part of this movie, but I don't really know what else I can really get into because like it's a very disposable throwaway thriller. It's a type of film that I think Netflix makes because it has a star. And it's a pretty cheap, easy movie to make. It's one central location and it doesn't really require them to do all that much in that location. So I can see it being a pretty easy and cheap movie for Netflix to make, and then they put it on their site and it gets popular for about I don't know, 2 weeks, and then nobody thinks about it again. So yeah. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the film. Otherwise, it's a bad film and it's not really worth your time. But if you happen to catch it, like many other people on Netflix, that's what I thought of it, and I'd give it a D+.
D+. You know,
yeah.
I think it's so interesting with Netflix. It's like you never know when you're getting. Well, I guess you do probably know, but sometimes it's weird that there's very little distinction in their library between these are kind of more like the TV films of yesteryear.
Yeah,
and these are like here's Roma. You know, like it's so weird the range. I'm gonna say, in addition to big fan of Jesse T. Usher, mainly because of The Boys. He's just so good. He's so funny in that. But I am a huge proponent of Camila Mendes. Mainly because she's one of the few Latinx actors who is like, I don't know, I think she is just like, she's doing a really good job getting casted in roles that are not defined by her ethnicity. And that's something I appreciate. I think she's Brazilian. And sometimes I do get the sense that like, you know, whenever I want to see representation because I'm Latin American and I want to see representation for people who look a little bit more like that, but without having to be shoehorned in certain types of roles. If you look at her filmography, I think she's done pretty well to avoid that stigma. It's just kind of a shame. Like, you know, she was in Perfect Date last year, which I mentioned, and she doesn't really do much in that movie. I didn't see the first film she ever did. Did you ever hear about The New Romantic? It was like a festival indie from 2018.
I don't know. I was going to say, this is, I think, the first thing I've seen her in a movie or TV show. So I don't have any familiarity with anything else she has done.
She's only been like in a handful of films. And the only ones I've seen are The Perfect Date. And she also has a kind of a small role in one of my favorite films of 2020, which is Palm Springs. And we don't know when Palm Springs is going to come out. But that's the new. Oh my gosh, I can't wait for you to see it. That's the new Lonely Island thing that's coming out.
Yeah, joint.
The new Lonely Island classic.
Sure.
And Palm Springs, she doesn't get like a huge role, but she gets to do some fun stuff in that. And I think that I think she's on her way to a really fun career that, you know, really obviously started with Riverdale, but man, she's also good in Riverdale. Like when you watch that show, she's a boss. So I'm all for Camila Mendes. Let's get her into something a little bit more presentable in terms of movies. I'm done with no more of these Netflix, takeaways. She's better than that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to judge her.
I'm not judging her
as an actress. No, I'm saying I'm not going to judge her talents as an actress based on this movie alone. Like, I'm sure.
That's all I ask.
Like I said, I mean, Elliot Gould is like one of our national treasures, and he's like just barely putting in effort in this. So, like, if I would not judge anyone based on this film alone, but I certainly hope that whatever she does next is better than what we got here. So, all the luck to her.
Well, you know, in a similar vein, I'm going to talk about a film featuring another actress who is younger, who is clearly like getting more of a start, and she also has a little bit of a background with Netflix. So this movie I'm going to talk about as we finish things is Clementine, which premiered at Tribeca last year, and which, you know, in a few ways is kind of sad. We didn't get a Tribeca Film Festival this year. That already passed, and I'm a little bummed out about that, but Clementine is going to be hitting VOD this weekend by the time you're listening to this. And it was written and directed by Lara Gallagher. I think she's more known for like short films, music videos, and things like that. And I'm into this movie. Of all the ones we've talked about in terms of like narratives, this is a pretty strong art house indie movie that I think it should appeal to a certain type of cinephile. You know, the last couple months, you and I have been tackling smaller movies, things that are hitting VOD, and I'm starting to be a little bit more discerning with which ones are more gems worth people's time to actually seek out on VOD. This one, I think you should at least watch the trailer to see if it's your speed, because Clementine is kind of a slower drama. It stars Mara Marrero, who I think this might be her first film. I wasn't aware of her until this, and she's actually quite tremendous. I'm like kind of surprised I haven't seen her in anything else. But also, as I mentioned before, Sydney Sweeney is the other lead, and so we saw her in pretty recently in the Big Time Adolescence. She was the girlfriend of Pete Davidson's character, and we also saw her in Handmaid's Tale,
Euphoria?
And Sharp Objects, and before what?
Oh, isn't this the girl from Euphoria?
I haven't seen Euphoria, so I'm not sure if she was in that.
Okay.
I think that's probably true. But also, I think the last Netflix thing she did was Everything Sucks, the 2018 90s
your
comedy
favorite
series. Yeah, which got canceled. One of the few Netflix series that actually got canceled. Which was kind of sad. That was kind of a fun show.
You liked that one, I remember.
Yeah, it was sweet. I had a fun little episode about Wonderwall that I appreciated in its nonsense. But anyway, Sydney Sweeney is an actor to watch for sure. But hey, also Will Britton, who we haven't seen him in a few. It's been a minute from him. I think last thing we saw him in was maybe Everybody Wants Some and A Teacher. But we also have Sonia Walger. Oh my goodness, one of our great actresses on the TV world for sure. But we haven't seen her, and I can't remember the last time I saw her in a movie. So she gets to have kind of a small role in this. But really, the two stars are Mara Marrero and Sydney Sweeney. We meet Marrero's character Karen, who is kind of dealing with a breakup, and she's been kicked out of the house of her older girlfriend, and she decides to go to her ex's lake house and kind of bunker down there and kind of try to deal with her grief over the end of this relationship. And she meets this girl named Lana, played by Sweeney, who is kind of a different energy. She's a bit younger than her. And so the movie's kind of examining, like, in the world of like relationships where there are big age gaps, in this case, between women. It's exploring when the younger person in that dynamic starts to wonder if they should do the same thing with someone younger than them. That is where I think this movie certainly finds its unique strain. We don't have a lot of movies that honestly deal with this. Like, for every, movie dealing, like, for every LGBT drama like Call Me by Your Name where there is an obvious age gap, it tends to be kind of glossed over. It tends to be a little bit like it existed, it happened, and the director sort of focuses more on the romance aspect. Whereas this movie is actually paying a little bit more attention to the reservation of your main character, and like, do I really want to go down this path? Do I really want to rebound? Do I really want to explore these feelings that conflict with the dynamics I've had in previous relationships? And then one of the good things that the movie does is it gives fair attention to how Lana feels about all of this. And that's mainly comes in Sweeney's performance, which is actually pretty layered and pretty complicated. And it was something that I really appreciated about this. This is like a summer lake house festival indie, okay? It's small, very low budget. It's only 90 minutes. It's kind of a breezy drama, and it moves. I say breezy in the sense of like not a lot of plot, it's a lot of just characters, quiet, small conversations. I think the movie kind of trips up a little bit when in terms of like how the characters talk. But even though it moves pretty slow, I do think it has a good pace. And one of the things I really appreciate about this is that even though it's a debut film, it actually is really good with the editing is really good. I think the framing of this location is visually interesting. You can tell that Gallagher and the cinematographer, Andre Carew, clearly have a pretty good knack for weaving in scenes that pay attention to the location and get these images and these rooms and where everything is located kind of burned into your brain. And what I liked about that is we don't usually get that from first-time filmmakers. Usually they tend to just stuff their movie with a lot of information, a lot of detail, and a lot of ideas. And it ends up, for a movie that, even though it might be really artistically ambitious, it ends up feeling a little overstuffed, a little overstated, and just not focused enough. And I think this movie is very focused in what it wants to say and how it wants to get there. There are a few tropes you'll see coming. There's a few things you'll see in Act 1 where you're like, that's going to come back. Okay. You're going to be a little bit ahead of this movie in some respects. But I think for what it is, it's the kind of art house indie that I think a lot of our listeners do respond to. Based on the comments I read and the things you ask us to review, Clementine is certainly something worth seeking out. Check out this trailer. I think it's pretty honest in the movie you're going to get. And if you would just really want to see something kind of simple and honest in the indie scene, try to watch it blind as well. That might actually be more worth your time. This is the movie I mentioned earlier that is coming out from Oslo. So I didn't even realize that too until you mentioned the connection between this and Beastie Boys story. So I find that pretty interesting actually. Yeah. And if that's the kind of film you're looking for, this one I think is worth your time. And for you, Will, if you happen to get access to a screener or something, or if you just kind of want to slow down a little bit, your life's pretty fast paced. Will, I know that.
Yeah, it's just always action packed. Yeah,
fur is flying. If you want something a little bit more folky, a little bit more contemplative, and not flashy, that is this movie. I'll say too, the soundtrack is good. The music is a little one note. I don't think that it's particularly impressive, but just about everything else is. I think the performances are good here. I think it's a good story. It's a good message, and the way it's laid out is pretty provocative in some ways. And this film does take a few risks, and it could start some really interesting conversations about what I was mentioning before about the age gap in lots of relationships, straight or homosexual. So I did find that worth my time, and it might be worth yours. So I give Clementine a solid B. And so fun episode of the show. I think a couple things to recommend, a few things that are more so, I suppose. But for me, actually, I think I came out of this pretty okay compared to you, Will, because you got to watch Dangerous Lies. And I got to actually recommend a few things like Hollywood, Clementine, Beastie Boys stories. So,
sure.
I mean, there you go.
I was favorable on the half of
it. Yeah. And Beastie Boys story.
Yeah.
Good episode, though. I feel like, this is a pretty good, lots of different things in this list of movies. I think we kind of found something for everybody here.
Yeah, I mean, I was also going to say, if you're looking for some good, like, off the beating path indie stuff, I would explore Ocelab's, Ocelope Labs, however you pronounce it, their filmography, because they do have a lot of very interesting stuff. I haven't seen everything from them, but the stuff I have seen from them, even if I don't love it, at least it's interesting enough where it's like, okay, I got something out of, I saw something here that I wouldn't see in a lot of other movies. So definitely, if you have a chance, look into their stuff and hopefully find some good gems.
The analogy is probably like, Ocelot is like A24's younger brother, who's kind of cooler and more creative, but doesn't get a lot of attention. So that's how it's
kind of like their grunge indie band brother, who's like, like kind of like playing like shows in like very decrepit
very
basements.
Wow.
And it's like, it's interesting, yeah. But it's like, the aesthetic's a little weird, but I definitely got an experience out of this. So I feel like that's kind of like the comparison, I guess, to A24. But definitely a lot of good stuff from there. I know they did The Love Witch, which I really loved from a few years ago. And then Madeline's Madeline, which I liked a lot. So yeah, a lot of good stuff in there. I would recommend their stuff.
Yeah. Next week, we have a few things we're thinking about checking out. We're thinking about checking out Emma, which is EMA. So not Emma, period, which had two
How are we going to find that?
Like our SEO is going to be shot if we review this, but I do want to see it. I've heard very interesting things. We also are working on the Devs, the new FX show. I think it's FX.
Oh yeah.
You've already started it. I kind of want to get into it. I'm just kind of looking into when I could see that this week, and then also Blood Quantum, which just came out on Shudder. These are all things that have already come out, right? I haven't really put my eyes to things that are about to come out, so. Who knows? Is there anything that coming up though that you're remembering that I'm forgetting?
Well, I mean, I have seen the remake of Valley Girl, which comes out this weekend. I'm very curious if you're going to check that out. That'll probably be our main review if you do. But I can't really talk about it.
What else are we both going to watch?
Yeah.
Who knows?
But I don't know if does Netflix have anything coming up this weekend? I'm sure they do.
It's terrible. I should have prepared. I honestly haven't looked at any of the release dates, so we're probably going to find out as the week goes on. And as always, go to the comments too if something comes out that you're curious in us covering.
Yeah, I mean, don't they have is that David Spade thing coming out pretty soon? I don't know if we're going to watch that, but I think that's coming.
I don't know. Yeah, and I honestly I have to take a look because I have a few screeners I could dig into, but I'm just forgetting what it is. Everything's just overlapping at this point. I can't keep track.
Yeah, I mean, I know The Lovebirds is coming out at some point on Netflix, but I don't know when.
I won't believe it until the day of.
Sure. Fair enough. And then when doesn't Scoop come out at some point this month? to VOD?
I think I honestly forget what the release date is supposed to be for the VOD, and apparently New Mutants was like on Amazon Prime to pre-order for like a minute, or like at least get ready to pre-order, whatever it was. So that was a bit interesting. That might be hitting VOD, which I would be surprised it wouldn't just go to Hulu, but I don't know what's going to happen with that.
I think they have to put it on. I don't know. There's like a whole thing.
We've talked about it. Yeah. Like if they were going to just dump it, it would be VOD because of the theatrical exclusivity. And
like, something with HBO.
But I could see it being on VOD for like, 10 minutes. And then next thing we know, it's on Hulu. Like, I don't know. We'll see what happens with New Mutants. That is going to be a whole episode, probably a 3-hour conversation. I hope.
Oh yeah. That's going to be an event.
Maverick Hines is going to be back on the show, I hope, and then they're just going to fill out the. I mentioned Maverick 2 times in this episode. Look at that. Gonna edit that out. No, I was kidding. All right, that'll do it for us this week on Cinemaholics. Thanks as always for listening. Don't forget to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher. Just go to ratethispodcast.com if you want to do that. Our Facebook, our Twitter, it's all out there. It's all in the show notes. The Patreon, the email that we respond to. It all exists. It's so easy to find. It's right in the show notes. And as always, just go to cinemaholics.com if you want to connect with us even more. But we're out there, Will. We're everywhere that you want to find us. So that'll do it for us this week. From the internet, California, I am Jon Negroni.
And from the internet, Pennsylvania, I'm Will Ashton.
See you next time.